Good evening, Hugh. Joe, you better? Kevin's iPhone. Hello, hello. Long's on IWM. I don't know. I haven't looked at IWM yet. Still am in a short. AMD was looking pretty interesting. I think AMD longs might be a thing. Kimlesh, bye. What up, Joe? What up, what up, what up? All right. Long, welcome. I'm guessing there's probably not going to be a lot of people here today, given it's the Super Bowl. I'm guessing you find people either have it on in the background or do not care about football. I'm in the latter. Yeah. Oh, is it halftime already? Perfect. Perfect timing. Uh, right. What do we got for news this week? CPI on Tuesday. Some speakers on Monday. Uh, Retail sales on Thursday. PPI on Friday. What else is on Friday? Anything else? Just some Fed speakers and PPI, it looks like. PPI. I, I have no idea who those people are. Mom does, though. Put it back, please. I just found it on the floor. Oh, well, put it right here. All right, go back. Spy. I think it's gonna happen. I'm looking at the monthly for Spy. Think it might happen. Maybe not 520. I think we're gonna get to like 515, and then we might finally gas out. But you go sit down, please, honey. Thanks, babe. All right. Well, welcome to the Sunday Night Market Scan. My name is Joe. This is where I go over the tickers that basically tend to carry the market, as well as anything that I notice or people have requested tickers to go through and chart them out and talk and just kind of give my take on what I think is happening. I got a new tab. Did I get a thing? They give me something and then not tell me about it. That totally would be on them. I don't have a tab. You lied to me. um, I will go ahead and say that this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Um, Anything else you need, hit up the disclaimer, onlyoptionstrades.com/disclaimer, and we will hold it at that. All right. First off, we've got SPY. Now, most of you know that I'm a fan of the Al Brooks three gap system where we look for a breakaway gap. We use a second gap as a measuring gap, and then a third gap as an exhaustion gap, and that's when we look for a pullback. Whether or not it's a complete reversal or a pullback or whatever, we're looking for a directional change after the exhaustion gap, which would be the third gap. That's what we've been watching on the weekly here. Now we got another gap too that came in on the weekly. Right up there, we gapped over our previous all-time highs, hit our price target, and now we're pushing up further here. Not gapping as well as I would like to see, but that's interesting that I saw that because if I switch out to the monthly on SPY, there's a little bit of a different story here. So, like we had this gap here and it pulled back, filled it, and now we're getting a rip out of that gap. So here's our first gap. which would be our breakaway gap. Our second, all these lines, man. This is the old price target. Our second gap right there. And we're working on a third gap on the monthly. So I'm thinking we're going to push higher. And the way that we use this gap system to project out targets is we use the measuring gap. And we take a line. I'll take a line from the swing low that was put in before this gap started. I'll measure it out to the middle of the measuring gap. I'm going to duplicate that line. I'm going to move it up. And that is going to be the target, which puts us around 516. So I just put text 515, 516 price target. That's pretty much what we're looking at, that what I'm looking at here. Now this is a monthly chart. It took us a while to get there on the weekly, but you can see how it played out, the breakaway, the measuring, the exhaustion, the projection from the swing low to the middle, the duplication got us to this price target right here, which is where we hit. In addition to hitting that price target, SPY gapped over it and then found support. So this price target right here, this blue line, we got a gap over it and we found support. So a supported price, which is going to be key going forward. So we gapped over the price target, we hit the price target, and it supported the price. So that just tells me that we're most likely going to continue up, in my opinion. And looking at the monthly, we've got a nice fat price target up there around 515, 516. So I think we're going there. Now, we might rock it up there this week. We might not. We'll see. But we do still have some big earnings coming through. So I'm bullish on SPY. I said all that to say I'm bullish on SPY. It's the second gap created is the measuring gap. I'm using gaps between candle wicks. So you see this area, this wick right here, and then this wick right here creates a gap. There's our breakaway. This one's our measuring. Now this one's the exhaustion, and we'd be looking for a pullback after the exhaustion, but I want the price target to get hit first. I think we might hit the price target first. If it doesn't hit that price target up at 515, 516, and it decides to pull back now, I would be looking more for one of these gaps to support the price going forward. But given that it supported it on the weekly right here, I think we're going to go ahead and keep going up for right now. So that's what I am looking at on SPY. We haven't seen this type of price action on SPY, this green of price action on SPY, since right before the COVID collapse. So if you look back, the last time we were that green consecutive weeks was right before COVID happened. Excuse me. So just something to keep an eye on. I mean, history doesn't always repeat itself, and you can't really use trying to use a chart to predict the future of the markets is a little ridiculous, in my opinion, because the markets are going to do whatever the markets want to do. But you want to use this to color or draw? Go ahead. But I still think we're going to hit that price target first. So that's how I'm feeling on SPY. Q is pretty much the same thing. We had the three gaps going on the weekly here. I haven't looked at the monthly, but I'm assuming it's going to look relatively the same, which it does. It's still three gaps right there on the monthly as well. So I'm assuming we are going to see Qs and SPY push up. IWM still just chopping. Well, now we're flagging. So I was in the short to bring it back down. I wanted it to come back down because it was ranged and it swept all these highs. So it made sense to me that it was going to come back down. But the last 2 months here, I mean, we're only not quite halfway through February, but we do appear to be putting in some structure here on IWM. Whether you want to call it a flag or not is up to you. But definitely something to keep an eye on there. We might want to try and break out further. You could even do something like that. And if we start seeing small caps rallying, that might be some fun stuff right there. Anybody have a favorite small cap that they're watching or that they want to go up even further, or has been beat up so bad that you can't really lose much? I like Plug and Epsel. Those are mine, but so IWM looking like it wants a reversal here. We'll see. That's a pretty L. The diamonds just on a slow bleed up. They just keep going up. I mean, boomer stocks are going, carrying the market as well with the S&P and tech. So there's no reason to think that it's going to stop in the next couple of weeks, at least. I think we're going to keep going up. All right. Goldman pushed itself back up under this price and it's still just chopping along here. Given this price action after it took out these lows and then pushed itself back up here, it looks like it might want to go. But I would look for a close over this previous high around 389.44, which is this price right here, for some movement up. It keeps sweeping those highs, but it's not dumping. See, it pushed up into it, pulled back. There's 2 weeks where it swept this previous high, but it hasn't broken out yet. So I'm thinking it's either going to push up or push down here sooner rather than later. There is a broadening formation here. So something to keep an eye on. Goldman I watch because it's a heavy hitter in the banking section, and can turn banking markets around. Same with Morgan Stanley, but Morgan isn't quite pulling its weight in comparison to Goldman now. Similar setup that I was watching, got the bounce in the gap, but it didn't get the break to the upside. So Morgan Stanley being a little bit of a heavier one. We'll check out JP Morgan here, getting the close over that high, which makes me think it wants more. And Bank of America is struggling chart wise. So banking sector, kind of a mixed bag is what I'm feeling. Looking at larger like investment style banks like Goldman tend to be doing a little bit better. And then, Bank of America is one of those banks that does tend to take on more risk than like a Wells Fargo. But there's still more of a consumer bank, right? It's where you put your checking account type of bank. So Netflix here. Let's take a look at Netflix. Got the pull up, the push over 5. It is rocketing up here. I think it's going to want 600 this week, and it's probably going to push up higher too. They had a really good earnings. They had some decent numbers. I think like they had like decent subscriber numbers, right? And there seems like they were having such a hard time getting over 500, and finally it went, and they sent it hard over 500. So then they just did the $5 billion deal with TKO and WWE. So, which was interesting because usually when a company spends $5 billion, you see their stock price go down, and it did not go down. It just chilled out there for right now. So I think we're going to see Netflix push into 600 in the next week, probably 2. Disney getting the break out of this downtrend on the weekly with that big move on earnings. And it'll be interesting to see. What I'd be looking for is for a retest of this trend line. That's what I would like to do to be looking at a trade. Let's look at maybe a smaller time frame here. Did get the nice push up. It'll be interesting to see if this area here can support price. I'm guessing probably not, since it was in after hours and pre-market. But it supported it a little bit on Friday, and then it just kind of chilled there. So I'd be watching Disney. If it can push through this gap, it might want to test that trend line around 101, 102, and then see if it can push itself back up there. But Disney getting the breakout on a long-term chart, uh, back to swinging calls, I would think, on something like Disney. Yeah, I'll put master, master MicroStrategy. I call it master, but I'll put it on the list and we'll get down to that. So Disney breaking out long term, pushing up, pulling back a little bit. I'd like a little bit more of a pullback, but we'll see what we get. PayPal decimated after earnings, getting the dead cat bounce. I would get some puts on this thing and just ride it back down. That whatever puts work for you if you want to. I should say the suggestion to do something is not financial advice, but PayPal looks to be having some issues, and I'm glad you enjoy it, J-Dub. Looks to be having some issues. The market swept up to almost 70 there before they dumped it all the way down, which makes me think that they're going to want to dump it even further. You have to push into that gap and then the dump down. So PayPal, I feel, is just going to continue dropping based on the last earnings and the fact that like there's not a whole lot of hype around them right now, in my opinion. ZOM in the energy sector, taking a beating after oil got that push down. We did get the push into 96 that I had been watching here. We completed this move all the way back down, found some support at 96, and now we're bouncing back up over the 50 mark for this last big move. So it's looking like it wants to be a little bullish. It's showing a little bit of strength. It's showing some strength here. So I keep an eye on ZOM if you're into energy stocks. You also got what appears to be kind of a loose head and shoulders starting out here. So maybe if it gets a push back down to 98, 90, 97 and a half or so, and then tries to push up, that's what I would be watching on that. Also, if it can get, a push over this trend line and continue up, that would be also a bullish sign. But this move back up after a push down below 98 and then the move back up and then the held at this 50 line right here, it's feeling very bullish for ZOM. UPS, good earnings on numbers, but then they just got the drop. They beat their earnings. They barely missed revenue. The thing with UPS is that they are a juggernaut. They have a ridiculous amount of money. They know how to run their business, and they've been doing it well for a number of years. So I am actually looking for them to pull back a bit more. I would like to see it into the 120s, to be honest. And let's take a look here. I would like to see it into the 120s. That's the short that I took. Technically got stopped out of, but I re-entered. And I'm looking for a push down into the 120s to fill this gap out here, and then find some support and then come back up. But there's always an old saying that with how logistics and shipping companies go, if you start seeing them having issues for profitability, there's possible rumblings again of a recession. Same with packaging companies and companies of the like that ship the goods and services that countries make. If they're saying that people aren't buying as much, or they're not buying as much of the stuff like the disposable stuff, then that could be an issue. So keep a look out on UPS. I am looking for a push down into the 120s, and then I would like to see it find some support down there. Square not doing much of anything. Just kind of chilling down here with block. I was looking for a push down into this 618 mark for a long. It hasn't gotten there yet. It's just kind of chopping along these past few weeks, not really doing much of anything. So I am still waiting for it to come down to around 54 3/4 for a long. But since it hasn't gotten there, I haven't taken any trades on Square yet. So still something I'm watching here. Qualcomm, I think, is another one of the sleeping giants. I've been talking it up here for a while with the surge in uh, semiconductors and chips. I think it's going to be something that people are going to sleep on and not really realize exactly. Oh man, Qualcomm's like bigger than we thought. Uh, so I would keep an eye on this. It did sweep this previous high. Sweeping action means it wicked up there and then price immediately returned to the area where it was. It didn't close above there and keep going. It just kind of popped up there and then came right back down on the weekly here. Monthly looks like it might want to try and like reverse a little bit, but again, we're not even halfway through February yet. So I'm not really looking a whole lot at monthlies right now. I am keeping an eye on most weeklies and dailies. That's where I tend to live. Not really. Some people may see a head and shoulders here, but price never got the push back down into 135 for the setup on the right shoulder. It actually hit a higher low. So that would almost feel like it wants to hit a higher high and try 160 there. So maybe looking bullish right now on Qualcomm. It did the little sweep, pulled back, filled up these gaps, and we'll see if it can get a push up into 160. But not really something I'd be looking to take an entry on, unless it's just to buy shares and sit on them. Intel as well, big gap down on the daily off of the earnings, kind of finally trying to cup around here in this gap in this area where it found price to be supported earlier. I think it wants, I mean, based on this chart, I think it's going to want to push up into that gap. It's kind of curling down here. Got the wick below. It's been finding support at that price over and over and over again on the daily. And now we finally got a nice volume candle and a push up over these highs. So I would look for, possibly some upside on Intel and Qualcomm going into this week and probably the next. Yeah, I'll add AVGO. AVGO. AMD. I had AMD on this list, did I not? Did I skip over a bunch of stuff? I skipped over a bunch of stuff. Okay. VRT marks the beginning of the requests. So Apple still in the long, still pushing up. Didn't get the inverted cup and handle that I thought might happen. Instead, it just went big candle up and then moved. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this if possible. Let's move visibility. Let's go. Let's turn you off on days. And then I'll just go ahead and delete this because it didn't happen. And now it's pushing back up through these gaps, finding support. Is this a week, maybe the next 2 weeks, where we find Apple trying to get up into 200 by the end of the month? It'll be interesting to watch. But it found support at that gap, took the long, and off it's trying to go. Last week was an inside week, which is going to give a really nice, in my opinion, a really nice move on a day trade here. So when I say inside candle, the price action for last week was contained within the previous week's price action. So last week did not hit any high or low from the previous week, which sets up a really nice day and possible swing trade depending on how price is moving. So I'd look for a break of last week's low for a move into the previous week's low, or a break of last week's high for a move into the previous week's high. Okay. And then for funsies, I'm going to toss out a fib retrace on the previous week there. And what we see right where it bounced is right about 50% of this previous week. So the inside week found support at 50% of the previous week. I would be bullish on this setup, but it's not something that I would take until it broke the high or the low. And I'd want like a close on, a 4 hour chart or an hour chart, something a little bit more sustainable. Obviously, the move to the south is going to be the bigger move. So something you adjust your risk reward on it. Sorry, I would adjust my risk reward on it based on where the price target is, and I would adjust my stop to at least get a 2 to 1. But doesn't always happen that way. But that's what I would be looking at on Apple. Let's see, AMD. AMD getting the push up, the pullback, finding support at previous all-time highs here. I think it wants to continue up. I think it's going to continue the um, the move with the rest of semiconductors. Again, with AMD, you're going to want to watch NVIDIA. And if NVIDIA starts giving up key levels, then maybe not take AMD longs. But it's putting in a nice little wedge here on the daily. I'd look for the break of that wedge and then the push to the price target based on the wedge breakout. Okay. So neither bullish nor bearish on AMD until it breaks one of those structures. Amazon, big gap up, big push up. I think it's going to want to continue up. I think we're going full juggernaut here on Amazon, and I think we're going for all-time highs. That's where I think Amazon is going. If I can get my magnet to work right here, I think we're going for 190. So I'm bullish on Amazon up to the 190s, probably even 200. Again, this is a weekly chart, so that'd be a move, not going to happen on Monday type of move. Is looking for something to move over a few days. Okay. And that would be something where unlike if I wanted to day trade that, I'd get down to like an hourly chart. Then we see price moving up over these previous highs, still finding some support there. I'd look for a little pullback into this gap area around 172 and then look for a long around 172. That's how I would approach that move. Something of that nature. Boeing putting in some structure here finally. Finally just getting some chill after all the not so good news on Boeing. Putting in some structure, finding some sort of normality here. Let's see if I take this and I duplicate. No, if I take this and I duplicate it, and put it down there, we could be getting a nice channel to the downside here. So just keeping an eye on this, seeing if it breaks this bottom trend line for a move down into 200. See if it can break that top trend line for a move into 215, and then see if it can go back up from there. But Boeing finally getting some chill. It's it's had a rough past couple of days. Yes. It does. All right. So next up, Coin's got earnings this week. They're getting the push up. Look at where that price happened to stop right there on a monthly chart, just over the 50% mark of the gap on a monthly chart. So that's a big candle. That's a big what if candle, in my opinion. I was looking for a move down to 70, and it did the flippity dude up to the top. And now we're in this gap, which should be acting bearish, in my opinion. So this would be something that I would be looking at a possible short on since we're in that area. And this could be the entry for the move down to 70. So I am feeling personally bearish on coin. It's in a downtrend. You could consider this a pullback in an uptrend too, depending on how you look at the markets. Yeah, honey. Yep. But I mean, looking at this weekly here, I mean, that's a classic pullback, rejecting at the gap. I feel like this would be a great entry for a short. So, and they have earnings this week, so just keep an eye on that. Earnings can always turn it around. One moment, I'm going to say goodnight to my daughter. Okay. All right. So that's coin. Let's take a look at Meta. Gap up, finding support. I still think this Meta wants to keep going. 600 feels like a legitimate target at this point. There is no stop in Meta, and it is moving up, and it's moving up quickly. So 600 again feels very plausible for Meta by the end of maybe February, pushing into March. But that would be something that I could take, maybe some day trades up to previous highs, but not necessarily something that maybe people would day trade. But Meta is going to be pushing the Qs, which is going to be pushing the rest of the market. So if we see bullishness in Meta and Amazon and AMD and Apple, that's going to be the fuel for the markets, the bigger market as a whole, pushing up and getting some strength behind it. So looking at these tickers, I may not necessarily think that, hey, maybe I don't want to take a long on Meta. Maybe premiums are a bit too much, or I don't want to buy shares at 468. But if I'm seeing strength in Meta, that would be a signal to me, be like, okay, maybe I could look at like some Qs, some QQQ calls. I could day trade those, or maybe some TQQ calls or some SQQs or whatever, looking at the rest of the market as a whole is going to help you as a trader and me decide where I want to take a trade. So again, I might not take a trade on Meta or Amazon or Boeing, but I could take a trade on the Qs or the diamonds or somewhere else based on the information I'm seeing on the rest of these stocks. Okay. Google, I tossed in there, filling this gap. I like Google. I think they do AI better than a lot of other companies. They also have the money. They got the breakout over the trend line. They're getting the push up into the previous high, the pullback, and now we're rocketing it back up. I think it wants a new all-time high by the end of the month. I think Google's going to try for it. Inside week, very similar to whichever ticker it was that we were just looking at. Looking for a break of the previous week's high or low for a move to the previous week's high or low. Would be a nice trade. Could be a nice day trade too. Hello, Norberto. Haven't gotten to your list yet, but it is down there and ready to go. Microsoft 420.55 is pushing up again, just like Meta. There's no stopping this thing right now, in my opinion. It is pushing through through all-time highs. Structure, breakout. Maybe we see a little bit of a structure again around 440, but Microsoft is in buy mode right now as far as price is concerned. The only thing I'm concerned about is volume is dying off and we're moving up. So if volume was dying off and we were in a structure, I would say that would feel bullish to me. But since we're moving up and volume is dying off while we're making new highs, that's a little bit concerning to me, in my opinion. So pushing up hasn't really changed direction yet. But for the short term, I think we're going to continue seeing Microsoft go up. NVIDIA, same thing, exact same thing. We got the price target here on the three gapper, 3-1-2-3 price target move. Let's take a look at the monthly. Big gap it's putting in right now. Again, we're only halfway through February, so I'm not too concerned about that. We could easily get a pullback and make a nice big bearish candle here on a high time frame. But it's something to keep an eye on with NVIDIA. Watching this weekly, like it's just ripping. It hasn't stopped. We're getting increased volume. There's no reason to think that NVIDIA doesn't keep going. And if NVIDIA is going to keep going, then I'd be looking at AMDs, Qualcomms, Intels, SMCIs, all your other Um, Semiconductor companies, your VRTs, also finding support and continuing to move up as well. So Roku has earnings this week. They got the pullback, the long, the push up. They're continuing to go. I still think it wants that 108 price, but with earnings so close, this would be a place where I would definitely look to start taking profits on those longs. I did take some profit last week and the week before because it got that really nice push up. Here's the thing though, this is the exhaustion gap. This is the reversal gap, and we got the push back down. We found support in the measuring gap, and now we're getting rejected at the exhaustion gap, almost to the tick. Okay. The bullish look on this though is we found support at a monthly breakaway gap. So if I swing out to the monthly here, looking at the chart, we got the breakaway gap right here in black with the push up, the pullback, the bounce at the center, and now the push up. So price wise on a larger time frame, Roku feels like it wants to go up. On a weekly time frame, feels like it might want to pull back a little bit off of this exhaustion gap hit. And that daily is where I would, look to possibly take a trade on. Over that 50% line there, if it can get back over 98.51, that might be a place where I would look. If I haven't gotten in a long yet, that might be a place where I would look to get in a long, and then maybe set my stop just slightly under the gap and then look for that target. Okay. So that's how I would trade something like that. And then Tesla's trying, man. Got the break to the downside, the push back to the upside now. I think it might want to return to 200 this week, maybe more, maybe even try and fill that gap. But again, long-term picture here. We're in a downtrend. Nice channel to the downside. Bounce pretty much at the bottom of that trend, which I'm pretty sure I said a few weeks ago to look for that bounce. I really wanted to get like shares at 175, but we never even I don't think we got to 175, did we? Did we get to 175? We did. 175.01 on Monday. And I wasn't around to take it because I was dying. But it's getting the push up now. So this might be exactly what I was looking for. The long into 175 and the push up. So I think it's going to try and fill this gap. I'd be bullish on Tesla this week. All right, down to the VRT. VRT price action says it. I mean, price action says it wants to go up. Volume's dying off here, though, and we're not really in a structure anymore. So as volume's dying off here, price just keeps going up. Take a look at a smaller time frame. Getting those highs, we're staying above them. Again, volume dying off as we're pushing up. So my only problem with VRT is that it might turn into something, another SMCI, and the algos are going to pick up on it. Investors are going to pick up on it, and they're going to run this thing up. And in a situation like that, technicals don't mean anything. I mean, if we look at SMCI, like this chart is just ridiculous. Like it just went full nuclear. Okay, it went from 320 to 740 over the course of like 2 months. So when we're looking at something like VRT, I mean, it also is ripped. Okay, we're in this position where all these companies are ripping, and they're not pulling back. So I know Norberto is going to be sitting there in chat saying, I'm buying these. I want this. I feel like I'm bullish on this. And he could very well be right. But this is not a position where I would want to long, in my opinion. Can't deny the price action momentum, though. So that's how I feel about that. VRT could very well want that push into 75. I don't know what their earnings look like. I haven't looked into any of their fundamentals. They haven't posted a bad earnings since February 2023. So here we are a year later. What are they going to look like? You know, price is moving up. Is price moving up on hype, or is price moving up on good numbers or good expectations? We don't know. And I think a year from the previous bad ER, we could be looking at some answers on that question. DHCP pharmaceutical. You don't really give me many pharmaceuticals there, Norberto. I don't. What do they do? Do they want to cure cancer like every other pharmaceutical? uh, I mean, just looking at the chart, we've got price pulling up to here and pulling back, and then breaking to the upside, and now supporting price. I mean, it kind of looks like it wants to try and get that gap filled to 33 on DHCP, but I don't know. I don't know squat about this company. I don't know what they're doing. They could what go away. They could be trying to cure cancer. They could not be. But DHCP, just based on this, it looks like it might want to make a move up to 33 over the next probably 2 months or so. What kind of a float does it have? Let's take a look at finviz.com. And we'll run the ticker DCHP. DCPH. Good Lord. And it's got a 49 million share float. 10% of it is short, a $1.2 billion market cap. Current holders are Vanguard and IWM. It is a Russell stock. Very well could be one of those situations where it might get a nice big push up, especially as small caps start pushing up. So DHCP, not looking too bad for a double your share price option. As far as a trade, if I were to get in now, I would set, a stop right around 10 and look for that move up to 33. That's a 3.6 to 1 risk reward. Seems like very doable in my mind. Splunk just kind of melting up here on lower volume. This feels very bearish to me on a weekly. So we got the push up over these highs. But I mean, look at how little the volume is. Right in this area. So as we keep going up, volume is definitely getting a cut. So the fact that it hasn't pulled back yet would help me believe that it might want to continue up. But with all these gaps up and then price just kind of like chilling, I mean, this isn't something that I would want to take a long in. I actually would rather take a short in it, to be honest. But that's my style of trading. ANET, got the breakout, the push down, and then the break back over, the fake out, and the push up. I mean, it doesn't get much more euphoric than that. 10 years ago, it was a $15 stock, and now it's 282. I mean, that's almost a 2,000% return in 10 years. This is, in my opinion, a chart that looks like this, where it just goes straight up, is screaming short me. Penn has earnings this week, has been chilling out here in this gap, hasn't broken to the downside of this gap. It's just accumulating down here. Hasn't it poked its head and then bounced back out. They do have earnings this week. I do feel like Penn is one of those stocks where it is a laggard behind DraftKings, and I think there might be something in store for them. So this is one that I'm holding shares in right now, waiting for something down the road to happen. But with earnings coming up, we might see some interesting price action. Their last earnings was bad, They missed by 1,400%. That doesn't seem right. And they moved up. So this could be something where we're seeing a bottom be put in around 19 and the push back up. So I am bullish on Penn long term, to be honest. So we'll see if we can get the push up. DraftKings has been up here in the stratosphere, filling out this gap, pushing through the weekly, continuing up. Super Bowl is happening. I don't see any reason why DraftKings doesn't continue up. The only thing that I would prefer is like it has done in the past here. It pushes up, and then it puts in some sort of structure. Pushes up, puts in structure, pushes up. I'd like to see some sort of wedge or a triangle or a channel or something happen above this gap. So maybe something like this, and then it decides to go forward. Type of price action, but I'm still bearish on DraftKings. Shop also has earnings this week. They got pushed back up into this channel. Feels very bullish to me. This price action got the move down, held at the gap, and then the push back up. So Shop feeling bullish to me this week. Datadog also feeling bullish to me. It got the return back up to this price. The long off of the 618 played out quite nicely. In the push up to 118, and now it's getting the push into 134. D-Dog crowd, they just seem to be doing well. But again, this isn't really a position where I'd like to take long on some of these stocks. They're up there so far over their highs, and they're just gapping up on lower volume. So I think D-Dog might be one that has fallen behind, and that investors are going to find out and get behind. So I would like to see some upward momentum on D-Dog here. Coke is going to be one of those companies. So we're seeing some bullishness in the S&P, which is great. And if we continue to see bullishness in the S&P, which I think we're going to, Coke is one of those companies that I feel, in my opinion, is a good one to just grab some calls that are dated out, that are maybe out the money, maybe some 66s with a year's time. What kind of premiums are we looking at for Cokes year out? Let me just look at Webull here. It's going to be off screen. So looking at a year out, January. Is it February? But January 2025, 66 calls, 65 calls are 170 to 160. Not too shabby. 70 calls are in the 61 to 56. So some decent cheap premiums there that aren't too bad. They're nice and far out, and looking for a nice push up here on Coke. What did Pepsi do? Does anybody know? How did Pepsi do on their earnings? Let's take a look. Pepsi got a breakdown. They kind of bear flagging here. Oh my goodness. So I'd keep an eye on Pepsi. Looks like it might want to get some downward momentum here, but it did get the push down after this ER and didn't break out of the channel. So maybe we start seeing some buyers come in here on Pepsi as well. Airbnb, I don't like this company. I don't think they have a very good business model going forward. And with nothing but regulations coming in for homeowners, it just doesn't seem like it's a viable option, in my opinion. We're flirting around IPO price, just kind of waffling back and forth. We got the push up, push back down, the push back up, the push back down. So the last couple of times it's reached the IPO price, it's backed off and it's made a decent move to the downside. So Airbnb, I mean, just the way from what I know of the company and how they do business, I don't feel like there's the value above even 160, in my opinion. You wanted me to check out CELH. Z, you say this is screaming short and it's up here, but it's putting in structure, right? SMCI is up here in the stratosphere of holy crapness with no structure going on, just going straight up. But CELH here, Celsius. I mean, I don't like Celsius as a company, but oh my goodness, why can't I click on anything tonight? This is getting old. Stop that. So we got the break on that trend. Now we're pushing back into it. This would be something that I do tend to watch options flow on. So this will be something on my list this week. Their earnings is the beginning of March. Looks like you might want to make a pullback. It's a nice little down channel that's in there. So I correct myself, Norberto. Yes, I would feel like this would be a good spot for uh, a downside move to the bottom of this channel. Not too shabby. Arm on the other hand is in ridiculous mode. But the volume is still there, right? You still see this volume here, and people have been slapping the calls on arm like they haven't stopped even after that earnings, even after that huge move. They have not stopped buying calls on arm. So I mean, this thing went 73% in 2 days. That's kind of huge. It did get the inside day, which again would make for a decent day trade. But I have a pretty good feeling that premiums on this thing are ridiculous and is not something that the majority of people here at OOT would probably bother trading or have the ability to trade safely and risking proper risk reward. Are they spreads are massive? Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. And they're not horrible on some of the stuff with like more volume and open interest. But yeah, once you get into stuff like on the weekly level, like the spreads are pretty gross. So I would look at monthly contracts on those ones and not the weekly ones. And then what else did you have there? Etsy. I mean, Etsy's pretty beat up. Yeah. It's not in a spot where I would take a long or a short on it, but I mean, it's definitely there. So this seems to be the area where it's having the most trouble is this gap right here. See how price rejected exactly at the 50 and then pulled back down. It did put in a higher low though. So we could possibly be seeing some sort of structure coming in here. But I don't know. I don't know what's Etsy gonna really do? They're in that position where they're like the old social media tech companies, like Snapchat and Pinterest, Etsy, eBay. They're just kind of like dinosaurs as uh, sites like TikTok and Google start, continuing to evolve YouTube. Etsy seems to be, in my opinion, one of the dinosaurs in that area, just begging to be bought up at some point. AMD, we were looking for continued upside on AMD. It is in this wedge triangle, whatever you want to say. So I would look for a break of it. Since we're looking at Nvidia being bullish, I would look for a bullish setup on AMD, bullish breakout of this trend line for a push up into 184 and a half, 185, or whatever that price is. I did master. Um, yeah, I mean, I feel like it's just going to continue up here. Again, I would like it to put in some sort of structure like it did before. Hmm. Okay. So this is a setup I don't see often on a monthly chart. And looking at micro strategy here. So, and this is why I like seeing it on a monthly chart, because the move can be so much larger. But we're getting the push up here. We got price hitting a higher high and a lower lot, a higher low, pushing up, and then January took out both the highs and the lows of December, and now February we're just chilling so far right now. So if it can manage to stay within January's price range, that would be a really nice setup for March. But right now it's just kind of waffling back and forth. I would like to see uh, it take out either the high or the low of January. If it breaks to the upside, it has a bit more potential for a larger move. But to the downside, it also has nice targets, one after the other, right down to 300. So this is something that I would look for, because premiums are going to be pretty high on this, if I remember correctly. It's not one that um, I typically trade. I don't trade MicroStrategy very often because the premiums are so juiced and the price is so high. But if this were something that I would trade it on a smaller scale, and I would look to day trade, and I would look to day trade the break of the high or the low of January. That's what I would look for on MicroStrategy. General Dynamics. Great move up, great move over. It did get the pull back and then the push up on the monthly. Feeling very bullish here. I don't see why it doesn't continue up. Are we at all-time highs on this thing? We are. So we're in new price discovery. You got to go with mental number. So 280, I think, would be a nice move to the upside. But feeling bullish on General Dynamics. All right. You are welcome, Nick and Ralph. I seen like 2 million on AI, 30 calls for March 23rd. Let's go take a look at it quick. AI, March 15th, March 23rd, 22nd, you mean? And 30 calls. That's right at the money. Do you mean March 22nd, Norberto? Because I don't see much here on these March 22nd calls. You could have meant maybe the 3rd or March 15th. March 15th had 3.6 million in premium. 79% of it was on the ask, with a decent amount of floor. I mean, yeah, I could see why he would post it. Let's take a look at the actual flow itself. What happened? Was it a big block? Was it lots of little ones? Okay, so it was 7,665 contracts in one shot, so 2.2 million hit that. Here's the thing, though. This is something that I would look for in the morning for an update on open interest. And the reason being is that the largest transaction for this was in one shot at 7,600 contracts. And the open interest on this strike, and I'm going to post this in the Discord, is 7,600 contracts. So hard to say right off the bat if the open interest tomorrow on this thing is somewhere around 14,000 or more, probably 15, 16,000, then I would consider it bullish. But it did have, and I'll post it right in trade for it right now. I mean, that's a striking numerical value on size and current open interest. So those contracts could easily have been closed out, or a large section of them could have been closed out. We don't know for sure. This is definitely something that I would wait and see in the morning. but it is being added to my list now that you have told me about it, and I will follow up with that. What are those premiums cost? 280. I mean, they're not horrible. They're not horrible. So, yeah, let's take a look at AI's chart while we're here. Feeling pretty beat up, in my opinion. This gap is still holding up quite well. The 618 is kind of not in play anymore at this point. So I'm going to delete that. This never happened. So we're going to delete that. I mean, it's finding support around that 24 to 26 price range. They keep accumulating it down there, push it to the upside, bring it back down, accumulate some more. Now it looks like they're pushing it back to the upside. We're also getting increased volume on the daily, which is nice. Let's take a look at the weekly. Nice larger volume candle on the weekly last week as we pushed back out of that gap. This is a really good illustration of price going down on volume that's also going down. So as price is making new lows, there's less people trading it, and then it got the nice pop to the upside. So I mean, chart wise, it hasn't gotten like it's very ranged in my opinion. Like it's just kind of flopping back and forth here. I'd really like to see a move like over 34 for a change in direction, like a change in price structure to the upside on AI. But not a bad move. Well, something to watch to see if it can find some momentum to the upside. Anybody have any other tickers? We got Toast this morning. Uh, not this morning. They do have earnings this week. They did get to the break to the downside of this trend line, and they keep rejecting the trend line, which isn't the greatest, in my opinion, as far as price movement. But I do like their business model, and I do like the way they do how they do it. I don't know if you've ever been to a restaurant that has toast, but it's pretty nice. And I looked a bit more into uh, their company. They tend to do things a little bit differently than other point of service companies. So um, there's still interest down here at these prices. We can see the volume is still here. So this is something that I would like to see a move up into the 30s over the next maybe month or two. We'll see how earnings plays out. See if they have anything cool coming across for earnings. But their last February one was red. They got a big rip to the downside here. So we'll see how they're doing a year out of that as well. Price action is saying not so good, but maybe they have some news for us as well. LSCC, Lattice Semiconductor. I don't know where you find all these semiconductor companies. You just like Google semiconductor companies that are publicly traded. Is it right on the tickers? I mean, just looking at this daily. Look at all these green E's. Every earnings has been green, 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 green. Um, it's definitely in like a premium area right now. I'd love to see it push up into the 77s based on this whole setup here. So this is essentially the setup that I'm seeing. The numbers aren't right on as far as where they should be for a harmonic. I'm just really using this as a means to illustrate what I'm watching here. But here is the point of interest that I would watch. It's a nice order block right there on a big time frame. Order block monthly. So we're on a monthly time frame with a big order block there. I'd like to see a push into that. So possibly into the 78s. We can long it into the 78s and then look for a reversal at 78s. Sorry. Um, So LSCC, I'd be looking bullish up into the 78 area, and then I'd look for a possible price reversal back down into the 51s, just based on the chart. Okay, I don't know anything about the company. ENPH had their bad earnings there, but on the larger time frame, it didn't make much of a move. Excuse me. Uh, let's take a look at the weekly. Bad earnings push up. Interesting. Looks like some lots of buying coming in through there. Definitely looks like it wants to make a run at 140. Let's see what this Fib retrace is. See if that's a 618 that it landed on. This one right here. That is the 618 that it landed on right there. Right, nicely, perfect. So 139 and a half, 140 seems completely doable, in my opinion. I would be looking bullish on ENPH. This is a very nice reversal setup. We got the push down here, the push down, the push back up, the break of structure over this previous high, the close, and the push up, the pull back directly into the 618. Feels like it wants to continue up. So, Kemlish, I'd be looking bullish on ENPH this next week up to the 139, 140 area. And yeah, I already did coin. I'm still feeling like it wants to come down. This is a great position on the monthly that it just hit. No, was it the monthly? No, it wasn't the monthly. Right there. Pushed right up into that monthly gap right at the 50%. And since I was already bearish on coin, this is giving me like the trigger to go short. So, yeah, Hugh, I would be looking short on coin. I am watching earnings on a few more companies here. Penn and DraftKings specifically. D-Dog, Coke has earnings this week. UPS for continued downside. Lyft, I don't think Lyft is. I think they're definitely losing the battle to Uber, just based on the charts. If you look at a weekly chart for Lyft and if you look at a weekly chart for Uber, you're going to see some very stark changes. Okay, so there's a weekly chart for Lyft. We'll take a look at a weekly chart for Uber. Look how drastically different those charts are. So, I would love to see Lyft just completely dump out and get bought up by Uber. This is essentially what I think might just happen, or some other tech startup that wants to buy their company. But I'd be looking at puts. I am personally looking at puts. That is not trigger to buy or sell anything. But I'm looking short on Lyft. I don't think this thing has anything left in the tank. Also, gold. This is not the right ticker, but I want Gold Barrick. Gold Barrick has earnings this week. I saw some unusual activity. I think I'm pretty sure I posted it in the Discord on the 15 and a half puts a few weeks, and it got the nice move directly into 15 and a half. I think they are still sitting on those. Let me just take a look. 15 puts. Let me just take a look at it. Yeah, there's still 40,000 open interest sitting on that. On February 1st, someone came through and bought 25,000 contracts around 37. And then they pushed up into 82 was the high on Friday for those contracts. So not a bad return, and they're still holding on to them. So they've doubled their money and they're still holding, which would lead me to believe that Gold Barrick most likely wants to continue down. But since I think their earnings is like on Wednesday. So their earnings is on Wednesday. So we might see those puts start getting cashed out as it feels like it's going to continue pushing down. So that's what I'm eyeing. That's what I'm watching. Oxy feeling like it's in a nice position to take some upside here too. Prices continued to find support here at 55. It's a couple more hits. Feels like you might want to make a push up. And what's oil looking like this morning? Pretty much the same thing. Showing some bullishness as well. I think oil might want to make a push up into a 79 there a barrel. So we might get $3 on oil here this next week. All right. If nobody's got anything else, I will give it a bit of a wait. You got a ticker you want me to look at? Please post it in chat. All right. I hope everybody has a good week. I hope everybody has a green week. We do have CPI on Tuesday, so avoid trading on Tuesday, in my opinion. Retail sales on Thursday, and then PPI on Friday. So we do have economic news this week. Tuesday and Friday would be the days that I would probably avoid trading. Unless you're a futures trader, then you'd definitely be looking at oil, natural gas, and gold in that order. And got some Fed speakers this week, but they're not as annoying as most people think they are, in my opinion. Tesla looking for a move up at least to 200, but I just don't. I don't see it. I don't know if everybody else has not seen it or what, but Tesla's definitely been beat up quite a bit. I did get the push into 175, which I missed, and I'm a little upset about it. But I did get the push into 175 at the bottom of this channel that we've been watching for a few weeks now. And that's exactly where it's starting to bounce and reverse back to the upside. So it's either going to push into 200 and I think reject and then continue down, or it's going to make a nice big move over 200, fill this gap, and then push up into the top of this channel that we've been watching here. So that is my take on Tesla. Looking bullish here, seeing what it does when it gets to 200. All right. If that is all, I hope you guys have a good week. And I'll see you in the Discord. Feel free to highlight me if you have any questions. Feel free to highlight any of the other staffers if you have any questions about anything. And have a good week. Take care.